Hello, and welcome to an article analysis by Tammy Nguyen. The article that I am analyzing is called Are Zeros Your Ultimate Weapon by Thomas R. Guskey. Thomas R. Guskey is a professor of education at the University of Kentucky, and his expertise is research and evaluation and assessment methods. The ideas that he mainly highlighted in this article is that he found that teachers tend to teach and evaluate students in a similar fashion that they were educated and evaluated themselves. So how marks were given to them and how they received it is how they tend to find is their reality and their livelihood for how they would give marks to a student. Traditionally, grades generally serve different functions. So for instance, grouping students into specific learning categories such as gifted, academic, applied, university, college, or determining areas that are necessary for improvement. And they also create grounds for determining acceptances into post-secondary plans. As you can see during the senior year, grades are very important into to apply forward into getting into a university or college or going to work. Alternatively, grades have also been used to serve psychological purposes. It helps motivate a student in their abilities in school performance. For instance, we get report cards in the middle of the semester so that the student knows where they stand on an academic level and whether or not they need improvement. And it assesses the level of effectiveness in the educator's teaching as well. The bad edge of the weapon, however, is that grades are sometimes used in this, as it has been found by Guskey, that as a weapon to threaten and shape students into improving their school. When teachers are frustrated when they see a lack of effort in the student's performance when they are trying to write an evaluation or an assignment, and they find that there's lack of accountability because the student is often handing in their work late, the teacher may want to find a way to send a very clear message to the student. And so they find that giving the student a solid 0 is a meaningful form of punishment. This is also due to the fact that this is the teacher's only domain of control. The teacher, although they are in parental locum, they cannot actually go home and take away the student's privileges, such as social privileges or material goods, so they can resort to altering their marks because this can indirectly affect the student's life at home. Often when parents find a 0 for the student's mark, they will take action into punishing the student themselves. But the effectiveness of the 0 has found to be actually very ineffective because it does not reflect the student's actual performance. When a student hands in a partial amount of work, it does not mean that they did nothing. A 0 implies nothingness and emptiness. Whereas if they had done just insufficient amount of work, perhaps they should be receiving an insufficient mark as a 40, as a non-pass. It also implies that the teacher is just trying to send a message of punishment, and that's not constructive. And thus, it often yields opposite results other than what was intended to occur. So the student makes less attempts at improvement. And there's an effect on the student's self-esteem. The assigned mark of 0 may have very negative effects on the student's self-esteem or nothing at all, because the student may fall further thinking that their attempts at trying in school is not worth it, so that's the loss in self-esteem, or they may ignore the 0 because they don't want to impact and damage their self-esteem, so they tell themselves that the evaluation was actually worth nothing and it's just another test. There have now been alternative methods that are proposed then to assign a mark of 0, such as remediating the student's performance by assigning the letter I, which is for incomplete, because it's much more accurate. It shows us that the work is just simply insufficient, it's not finished, there's areas where the student can improve, and it teaches the student accountability and responsibility as they are responsible for their marks, not the teacher chasing them around to try to give them a decent mark. Or the teacher can assign marks in intervals by giving a letter grade. An F can help the student understand that it wasn't that they did nothing, it's just that it ranges, it's equated to a mark of 0 to 20%, and that this is how much they need to improve. But it does not make them feel that they did not earn any mark at all. When I was relating this to the Growing Success document of the Ontario curriculum, I found that assigning 0s to students is very incompatible with the policy and functions of the fundamental principles of evaluation found in this document. For instance, it works against carefully planning and relating curriculum expectations. The student couldn't possibly understand what you actually want from them or what their learning goals should be if you don't work out a plan with them and instead just give them a 0. In fact, it's more like an abandonment method. It doesn't communicate clearly to students and parents at the beginning of the school year or appropriate points. If a student is at risk of failing your class or evaluation, instead of just assigning a solid 0, it is much more meaningful to convey a warning, convey words of where the student can improve instead. It doesn't provide evaluation that is ongoing, varied in nature, and administered over a period of time. Also, it does not provide descriptive feedback that is clear and meaningful. If the student doesn't know where they need to improve, they couldn't possibly improve, and they would be lost and confused into their plan of improvement. And last but certainly not least, it does not develop the student's self-assessment skills. Fostering and creating independent learners is one of the primary goals of being an educator. And to give a solid 0, the student does not know how to approach learning and to develop their own metacognitive styles and set their own specific goals, because all they see is a 0 as opposed to advice of where remediation can occur. While I'm glad to say that I've never received a 0 myself, during my time as a teacher candidate, I have found that a lot of Guskey's theories is true. For instance, the student does tend to disregard the mark of 0 to preserve their self-esteem, and they just say, who cares? It's just one test or a quiz. Or, alternatively, the students are genuinely lost or confused as to how they can improve their mark. How does this impact my own teaching? I am a very communicative person, I find, with my own students. I think that grades and evaluation can place a lot of anxiety and stress on the student that is unnecessary. Instead, I think that working together as a cohesive team is much more meaningful and can actually give the student a great learning experience. So I am very much so against giving 0s in evaluation, just as much as I am against putting a simple word as excellent or stellar, because it doesn't teach the student anything. A student may give a great performance, and an excellent takes away from the fact that they also still have room to grow. So a 0 or just a simple one-word evaluation is not enough. Descriptive feedback is very much so necessary, and it also leaves room for you to understand and communicate with the student what type of learning style works best for them, and then you could vary your own teaching methodology. Thank you very much for taking the time to listening and watching my presentation. Have a great day.